Yes, ma'am.
All right. Before you is Kanye Demarion Herring. This is indictment number. The first one he's pleading to is 2023 GS 161829. That indictment originally charges him with attempted murder. He's pleaded guilty to the lesser included of assault and battery, first degree, and that's due to the specific intent requirements of attempted murder. The facts don't really fit attempted murder. We're reducing that to assault and battery, first degree. He's also pleading to indictment 2023 GS 161819, discharging a firearm into a dwelling. 1822 is also discharging a firearm into a dwelling, and 1824 discharging a firearm into a dwelling. He's represented by Jay Irvin. My recommendation on this case is that he be sentenced under the Youthful Offender Act. And it kind of has an open component to it, Judge, whether you want to impose an active while away sentence or a suspended while away sentence would be in the court's discretion.
Good to see you, Mr. Irvin.
You too, Your Honor.
All right. Have you explained the nature and the elements of these four charges, possible punishment and constitutional rights to your client?
I have.
And do you believe your client understands the charges, potential punishment, and his constitutional rights?
I believe he does.
And do you agree with his decision to plead guilty here today?
I do.
All right. Mr. Herring, is that you? How old are you, sir?
20 years old.
How far did you go in school?
12th grade.
Did you finish?
Judge, he didn't finish because of this arrest.
Yes, sir. Okay. Did you work before all this?
Yes, sir.
Where did you work?
Electrician.
Are you married? Do you have any children?
Yes, sir.
How many?
2.
Mr. Herring, are you currently on probation or parole?
Yes, sir.
All right. When you enter a guilty plea, you give up important constitutional rights. Well, let me ask this first. Mr. Herring, do you suffer from any physical or mental condition that would prevent you from understanding what we're doing here today?
Yes, sir.
Have you consumed any medication, drugs, or alcohol that would impair your ability to know and understand what we're doing?
Yes, sir.
All right. When you enter a guilty plea, Mr. Herring, you give up important constitutional rights, such as the right to remain silent and not be compelled to testify against yourself. You understand you have a right to appeal your plea in my sentence, but it must be done in writing within 10 days. Understanding the nature of each of these four charges and the consequences of the guilty plea, how do you plead to each of these four charges? How do you plead to each of these four charges?
Guilty.
All right, and are you pleading guilty to all four of these charges because you are guilty of these charges?
Yes, sir.
All right. Yes, sir. He was standing over there. I thought it was him. Ms. Parker.
Yes, sir. Your Honor, this incident occurred in the city of Hartsville on August 6th of 2023. The police department was discharged to the 500 block of Swift Creek Road in reference to shots being fired. Your Honor, that there are apartments out at that area. When they responded, they did meet with a lady who had a small child that had been struck in the face by a bullet. The bullet actually had entered the cheek and exited the backside of the same cheek. Law enforcement discovered that there were 3 apartments that had been struck by gunfire, and a witness has seen a tall, skinny black male running from the incident location. Upon further investigation, they were able to pull surveillance footage in an attempt to identify who was involved. They believe there were 3 individuals, and that this was some type of almost like a shootout. Like there was like one party shooting at the other party. I will tell you that from looking at the videos and what law enforcement had even notated in the report, they believe that Mr. Herring or the party that would have been returning fire to Andrew Toney would have been facing away from the apartment. So, we're not sure if it was a bullet that he fired or not that went through the apartment that hit the small child in the face. But due that he did, agree to have a shootout in this area where there are apartments, and that bullet did strike, enter through the window or through the wall of that apartment and hit the child. We are making him plead to that today. he was originally charged and indicted for attempted murder, but of course there's a specific intent to kill
Yes, ma'am.
element required of that. So that is the reason why we reduced this to A and B first. I will go ahead and put on the record the surveillance footage is fuzzy at best. You see dark images, you see images of people, you cannot make out his face. But Andrew Toney, a co-defendant in this case, was identified, and as soon as law enforcement approached him, he confessed, he admitted to his involvement and told them that he had thrown the gun that he used in the lake. I don't believe Mr. Herring ever gave a statement, but he was, we feel like, implicated by witness statements and also by, there were some anonymous tips that came in too, where his name was dropped, and they said that they heard there was a shootout between Andrew Toney, this defendant, and there is a co-defendant that is also charged. Co-defendant Toney posted a bond and is out of jail. Co-defendant Tyquez Hadley posted a bond and is out of jail. Kanye Herring has remained in jail since his arrest, so I know he does have considerable credit for time served. This case is disturbing to the state. This is type of gun violence. I know the community and everyone is concerned with, that a mother holding a child on the couch, a stray bullet would come in and hit the child. It's just an awful set of facts. The child is okay. We have limited contact with the family and limited cooperation. We called the mother of the child in reference to this possible plea today, and a lady answered the phone and said that was not Miss Ward's number. Tyquisha Smith, I believe her apartment was also struck by a bullet, and we have a working phone number for her, but every time we've called, she's indicated she doesn't want to be here. The Davis family, we called our contact with them and left a message. And it's been like this with every bond hearing we've had. We've never had the family or anybody on behalf of this child come up to a bond hearing or anytime any of these defendants have been before the circuit court. And I will go ahead and put on the record, Mr. Herring does not really have a prior adult criminal history. I don't know what his juvenile history is.
Yes, ma'am.
I think he's young. We would just ask the court to consider these facts, and when looking at the YOA, if he were to get an active YOA, he wouldn't get credit for any of this time he's already served. He would go up the road and have guidelines to complete based on what he's pleading to. I think would be somewhere between 6 to 12 months, no more than 12 months additional. Then, of course, if you suspended the YOA, then he would be placed on the supervision component of YOA.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's the recommendation of the state, just under a YOA, but how you go about that, just in your discretion.
Yes, ma'am. And I just want to make clear for myself, did you say that he was facing away, so while I assume that there's not been any definitive testing of the bullet to determine whose bullet hit the child, but he was faced away from where the child was?
That's my understanding from reading the report and in viewing the footage, that he would have been involved in the gunfight,
Right.
Where his position would have been away from where this part was. But now that, as far as who instigated,
Right.
who fired the first shot, and exactly what was going on, I can't say. I do know there were no forensics in the case, as far as there were some shell casings and different things recovered. I think one gun ended up in the lake. They never recovered the gun that it's alleged that he had running away from the scene. So we have limited forensics in this case, and mostly the section relying on witness statements and surveillance. And then, of course, we got one defendant that confessed to his involvement.
Okay. All right. Mr. Herring, you heard the solicitor describe the facts that relate to these charges you're pleading guilty to. Do you substantially agree with those facts? You need to talk to your lawyer?
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He doesn't speak very loud.
I'm sorry, if you'll just speak into the microphone, the court reporter has to take it down. Do you substantially agree with the facts that the solicitor just gave me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, I find that there's a substantial factual basis for the plea, that the decision to plead guilty is freely, voluntarily, and knowingly made, and Mr. Herring understands he's giving up important constitutional rights by pleading guilty, and that he has had the advice and counsel from a competent attorney with whom he says he is satisfied. Mr. Urban, happy to hear from you, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. ironically, when these three people were originally charged, as Ms. Parker noted, Andre Tony, who's 45, so he's the older individual who confessed and would have been in the position from the direction he was firing his weapon to have inadvertently or inadvertently, I don't know, struck the child. I don't think that was intentional, but nevertheless, the other individual and Mr. Tony, who confessed, both received $75,000 bonds, which they made. Kanye Herring, who was 19 at the time, of course could not make bond and hadn't been able to, and he's been in jail for 622 days. So he's served a very significant amount of time at the detention center. And I would also note, he's appeared before you accepting responsibility for his actions, but at the same time, he had a weapon, and without a prior record, he could possess that weapon. He could carry it under the law that exists in South Carolina today. But that doesn't mean that his actions that occurred thereafter would be necessarily lawful, but there's certainly arguments you could make. But he's accepting responsibility for doing the wrong thing, engaging in this crossfire with Andre Tony and the other co-defendant, not in the direction where the child was struck, but Swift Creek Apartments is the location of this incident, and there were multiple apartments that were struck.
Yes, sir.
Fortunately, nobody else was injured other than the child with the graze wound. And I'm not minimizing that by any means. I recognize the severity of that. But he has no priors, and I think it's appropriate for the court to consider and hopefully adopt the time that he served and put him on supervision, given the fact that he has no prior record and he's tendering his plea here today, having served that amount of time. His mother, Nina Thomas, has talked to me throughout this process and been really concerned about him, as well as his stepfather, Franklin Woods. He's worked, in addition to working for I think it's Turner and Sons Electrical Service. He's also worked at various fast food restaurants, Sonic, Burger King. You can name a couple of other ones, Your Honor, that he's worked at there in the Hartsville area, and plans to go back to doing electrical work, and hopefully the court will see fit to allow him to do so. Judge, he'll be 21 on the end of this month, I think May 31st. So he spent basically the last couple of years in jail, and he's learned a lot from this only incarceration. He did have a prior arrest for carrying a pistol and having weed on him, having marijuana. That is pending in Darlington, which I assume will be taken care of as a result of this plea to this. It was an ounce of marijuana in it. What's the laws changed?
I don't know anything about that. Of course, whatever the solicitor wants to do with that, but that one's
Not before you, Your
Yes,
I understand that.
all right. If I see the lawyers over here, I got a quick question. All right. Mr. Harris, by the grace of God, those bullets didn't hit somebody else. One of y'all's bullets killed somebody, you'd be going to jail, be up there for the rest of your life. And these guns, you got a right to carry them in South Carolina now. Everybody got to take responsibility for what comes out of that gun. And it's just pure luck. Some of these firing into a house, or shooting in the air, or anything like that didn't kill somebody. You're a very lucky man in that regard. You're also a young man who has his life ahead of him, and I hope that you take this opportunity to do right. If you don't, it's going to be a long, long, hard life if you don't change. People you hang out with and being around guns and drugs and all that kind of stuff, because I see it every single day. I'm telling you, it's not a good one. You go up to Columbia, it'll be different. All right, I'm going to accept the recommendation of the state as to assault and battery in the first degree, indictment ending 1829. Sentence Mr. Herring to a YOA sentence not to exceed 6 years, provided upon the service of 622 days, time served, balance is suspended with probation for 3 years. Needs to get credit for 622, those 622 days. As to each of the 3 discharge of a firearm into a dwelling, and those indictments in 1819, 1822, and 1824. Sentence Mr. Herring to the same sentence, YOA not to exceed 6 years, provided upon the service of 622 days, time served, balance is suspended with probation for 3 years. He's to get credit for 622 days, and all of those sentences shall run concurrent at the same time. If you follow everything that they have to say, at some point in time, this will go off the record and you can move forward with it. One thing that I do want to have as a special condition is that for you to obtain your GED. You're going to need that. All right? All right. Thank you very much. Good luck to you.
This is Christian News TY. I'm Tony Conyers. Is there any newsworthy events? We will get them to you as soon as possible. If not, you can follow us on Christian News TY Facebook. You can follow us on YouTube, and you can follow us on our website.